A cold gust swept down Harbor Street just as the boy saw it happen. The quick flick of a hand, the flash of a leather wallet, and the startled turn of a biker who hadn't yet realized he'd been robbed. The boy didn't hesitate. For a kid who had learned to survive on reflex and instinct, this was just another moment where he moved before thinking. His legs shot forward, thin shoes slapping the wet pavement, and his voice cracked against the echo of the alley. Hey, stop. On. Before we get into the story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. The boy, Eli, felt his lungs burn as he sprinted. The thief, a wiry man in a torn gray hoodie, cut through the alley with the ease of someone who had done this 100 times. Eli wasn't fast enough to catch him outright, but he didn't need to. He only needed to slow him down. Behind him, boots thundered. Heavy, angry boots. The biker, Reese Maddox, was a wall of muscle, beard, and tattoos, the kind of man whose presence seemed to silence even the city noise. He didn't run often, but when he did, he was terrifyingly fast. And nothing pissed him off more than being disrespected, especially by a street thief too sloppy to know whose pocket he'd dipped. Reese's eyes tracked both Eli and the fleeing man. He didn't know the boy. He didn't know why someone so small and starved-looking had jumped into this mess. But he knew courage when he saw it, and he didn't let courage go unrecognized. Eli lunged, grabbed the end of the thief's hoodie, and stumbled as the man jerked forward. The cloth stretched, slipped from Eli's fingers, and sent the boy sprawling. The thief looked back, spat out a curse, and vaulted a stack of crates. Reese saw Eli fall, and for a moment the chase turned into something else, not just retrieving a wallet, but making sure the kid who tried to help him didn't get hurt. Reese barreled past Eli, barely slowing, and then he yelled over his shoulder, "Stay back, kid." But Eli wasn't done. He forced himself up, grit scraping his palms, and stumbled after them. The alley twisted and opened onto a side street cluttered with old motorbikes and rusting dumpsters. The thief sprinted toward a chain-link fence, but Reese closed the gap like a charging bull. The man climbed, scrambling upward, but Reese grabbed his ankle and yanked him back down. The thief crashed onto the concrete, rolled, and scrambled to his feet again. This time, he had a knife. Eli froze. Reese didn't. The biker stepped forward, shoulders squared, voice low and dangerous. "Put it down." The thief didn't. Instead, he slashed wildly, desperation making his movements jerky. Reese dodged, but the blade grazed his arm, drawing blood. That was a mistake. Reese grabbed the thief's wrist, twisted, and slammed him against the wall so hard the man's breath burst out of his lungs. The knife clattered to the ground. Reese pinned him there with one forearm across the chest. "Wallet," Reese growled. The thief spat blood onto the ground. "I don't have it." But even as he said the words, something glinted from his pocket. Reese yanked the wallet free, but before he could do anything else, a low whistle cut through the air. Eli turned first. 3 shadows emerged from behind the dumpsters. Then 2 more. 6 men total, all wearing the same gray hoodies as the thief, but cleaner, thicker, marked with a black emblem Eli had seen before sprayed across alley walls. The Ridge Lane crew. Reese swore under his breath. "Kid, get behind me." Eli didn't argue. His heart hammered. He'd seen Ridge Lane crew members before, but only from a distance. Guys who controlled chunks of the neighborhood. Guys people didn't make eye contact with. Guys no one snitched on because snitches disappeared. The man Reese had pinned started laughing. "You messed up, old man. You really messed up." The crew surrounded them in a loose semicircle, hands tucked into pockets where guns could easily live. One of them, the one with the scar running from his eyebrow to his jaw, stepped forward. "You picked the wrong guy to play hero," he said to Reese. Then he looked at Eli. "And the wrong stray dog to help you." Eli felt ice crawl up his spine. Reese didn't flinch. "Your boy lifted the wrong wallet." "You think we care about that?" the scarred man asked. "You put hands on one of ours. He cut me first." Doesn't matter. Another man whistled low. Hey, Reese Maddox. Didn't think the Hell's Angels let their guys walk around alone. Eli's eyes shot open. Was Reese a Hell's Angels? The kid had only heard stories, the kind whispered by men who tried to look tough, but their voice always softened with respect. Reese's jaw flexed. Didn't need backup for this little rat. The pinned thief tried to elbow Reese, but Reese slammed him harder into the brick, earning a groan. The scarred man lifted a hand, and all 6 crew members tensed. You're outnumbered. Reese stared right back. Try me. But Eli saw it before Reese did. Another shadow. Movement on the rooftops. A signal light flashing from a phone. The Ridge Lane crew wasn't bluffing. They weren't 6 men. They were setting up an ambush. Eli tugged on Reese's jacket. More coming, he whispered, voice shaking. Reese's eyes flicked upward, just enough to confirm it. At least 3 more figures waited above, watching like vultures waiting for the kill order. This wasn't about a wallet anymore. This was about a message. The scarred man grinned. Boys, let's. A distant roar cut him off. The sound of engines. Not 1. Not 2. Several. Loud. Angry. Growing fast. The Ridge Lane crew turned, startled. Even Reese frowned, confused for a heartbeat, until recognition hit him. The Hell's Angels didn't leave their own alone. Eli looked up the street as the first motorcycle burst into view, chrome glinting under the streetlights, exhaust shaking the ground. Then another, and another, a whole line of them. But there was a problem. The Ridge Lane crew wasn't retreating. They were reaching for weapons. Reese swore. Kid, run. Eli didn't. He couldn't leave Reese. He couldn't leave the man who had chased a thief not to save a wallet, but to help a homeless kid who had tried to help him. And in that moment, the boy made a choice he couldn't take back. He grabbed the fallen thief's knife. Not to fight, but to cut through the fear long enough to stay standing beside Reese when everything blew apart. The roar of engines shook the street as the first wave of Hell's Angels cut through the dark like thunder splitting the sky. Their headlights carved out beams of white across the cracked pavement, illuminating the tension-frozen standoff. Reese pinning the thief, Eli holding the knife with trembling hands, and the Ridge Lane crew tightening around them like a noose. The scarred crew leader didn't move right away. He watched the motorcycles approach, jaw clenching and unclenching, calculating. Eli could see his teeth grinding behind his lips. This wasn't a fight they expected. They had set up an ambush for one man, not a convoy of patched riders rolling in like a storm. Reese leaned close to Eli, voice low and tight. When they stop, move behind my bike. Eli swallowed. What about you? I'll be fine. You won't be if you stay in the middle. His eyes flicked to the knife in Eli's fist. And drop that thing before you hurt yourself. Eli lowered the blade, but didn't drop it completely. He felt stupid holding it. He felt even more stupid letting it go. But he listened to Reese, loosening his grip until the metal barely touched his palm. The Hell's Angels rolled in slow, controlled, and precise. No chaos. No shouting. Engines idled like growling beasts hungry for a command. The lead rider, a tall man with silver hair and a black bandana, slid his motorcycle sideways as he braked, blocking half the street. Behind him, 3 more riders formed a solid wall. The Ridge Lane crew instantly backed up a step. Not far, just enough to show they weren't suicidal. The silver-haired rider cut his engine last, the sound fading into a tense, humming silence. He swung off the bike, boots thudding heavily as he stepped forward. Eli didn't know this man's name yet, but the way the Ridge Lane crew stiffened, the way even Reese shifted his stance. Whoever he was, he carried authority like a loaded weapon. Reese, the man rumbled. You pickin' fights without me again? Reese snorted. Didn't pick a fight. It picked me. The silver-haired man's gaze swept the alley, pausing on the pinned thief, the crew members, then finally landing on Eli. For a moment, Eli felt every insecurity he'd ever had pressed down on his shoulders, his dirty clothes, his thin frame, the way he hid his hands so nobody saw how cold and cracked they were. But the man didn't sneer. He nodded once, as if acknowledging what Eli had done. The scarred leader stepped forward, posture stiff. We don't want trouble tonight. The silver-haired biker took a slow step closer. You bring 9 men for a simple pickpocket? It wasn't supposed to be your business. You made it my business when your boy cut mine. The scarred man's nostrils flared. Reese grabbed him first. The silver-haired biker's voice dropped a register. Calm. Deadly. You know how this works. We settle scores one-on-one. You escalate with numbers. He spread his arms slightly. We answer back. The tension in the air tightened so hard Eli felt it pressing against his ribs. Reese finally let the thief go, shoving him toward the center of the standoff. The thief stumbled, clutching his ribs, face twisted with pain and humiliation. Eli stepped back as Reese had told him. The Hell's Angels didn't even glance at him. They subtly shifted to block both him and Reese, forming a semicircle of leather and steel. The scarred leader glared at the biker wall. You think we're scared of you? No, the silver-haired biker replied. But you should be scared of who we call if you force our hand. A ripple of unease went through the Ridge Lane crew. Reese leaned just enough for Eli to hear him. He's not bluffing. What does that mean? Eli whispered. It means the Angels aren't even the biggest group they run with. If this goes nuclear, Ridge Lane won't exist tomorrow morning. Eli's stomach twisted painfully. For a moment, no one moved. The thief wheezed. The crew shifted restlessly. The bikers stood like statues. Then the scarred leader raised his hand. His crew tensed, but he didn't give an attack command. He pointed at Reese. This isn't finished. Reese smirked. Didn't think it was. One by one, the Ridge Lane crew backed away, dragging the injured thief with them. They didn't turn their backs. They kept their eyes locked on the Hell's Angels as they retreated to the shadows of the adjoining alley. The silver-haired biker didn't turn until the crew vanished. Only then did he look at Reese. You all right? Cut on the arm, that's it. And the kid? Eli jumped at being acknowledged. I'm okay. Reese jerked his chin toward him. He's the one who tried to stop the thief. A few of the bikers gave small, impressed nods. Eli felt his cheeks heat. Compliments weren't something he was used to. The silver-haired man looked harder at Eli, like he was reading the boy's life story in the lines on his face. What's your name? Eli. Got family, Eli? Eli hesitated. Reese noticed. The silver-haired biker noticed too. No, Eli muttered. Reese murmured. Kid's been around Harbor Street for months. Keeps to himself. The silver-haired biker exhaled. Well, Eli, you got guts. And you helped one of ours. He paused. So tonight, that makes you one of ours. Eli blinked. I what? Reese chuckled. Relax. Not patching you into the club. Just means we watch your back. But, Eli swallowed. That crew, they know I helped you. Yeah, Reese said. They do. The silver-haired biker crossed his arms. Which means we don't leave you out here alone tonight. Eli's heart started pounding again. You don't have to. Yes, the man said simply. We do. Reese placed a hand on Eli's shoulder, steady and warm. Come on, let's get you somewhere safe before they circle back. Eli stared up at the line of motorcycles, chrome glinting under the streetlights. The idea of riding with them felt unreal, like stepping into a world he'd only heard whispered about. But then something shifted in the air. A soft tapping. Light footsteps. Reese stiffened. The silver-haired biker lifted his chin. Someone was watching them from the other end of the alley. A small silhouette. But not Ridge Lane crew. Not a biker. A child. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, barefoot, dirty, eyes wide with fear. Eli's heart dropped. Reese muttered under his breath. What the hell? The girl stepped closer, trembling. Her voice was barely a whisper. They took my brother. Eli's breath caught. Reese's eyes sharpened instantly. The silver-haired biker's expression turned stone cold. Who took him? Reese asked. The little girl pointed toward the deeper shadows of Ridge Lane territory. The same men you just fought. And just like that, the night was no longer about a stolen wallet. It was about a kidnapping. And the Ridge Lane crew wasn't done. Not even close. For a few seconds, no one spoke. The Hell's Angels stood frozen, leather jackets barely shifting with their slow breaths, the engines behind them still ticking from the heat. The silver-haired biker stared at the little girl while Reese instinctively lowered himself to her eye level. Eli watched her trembling hands, the way she clutched the hem of her oversized shirt, the way her eyes darted around as if she expected the Ridge Lane crew to burst from the shadows any second. Reese kept his voice calm. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Lena," she whispered. Her chin quivered. Eli stepped closer without thinking. "What's your brother's name?" She looked at him, eyes full of panic and exhaustion. "Milo." The syllables hit Eli like a small punch, not because he knew the kid, but because Lena's voice cracked the same way as had when he was her age, when fear filled every corner of his world. He felt an ache he didn't want to show, so he swallowed and stood straighter. The silver-haired rider crossed his arms, shadows filling the lines of his face. "Tell us what happened." Lena shifted, hugging herself. "Milo, he worked for them. The Ridge Lane crew. They told him he had to run packets. He didn't want to, but we had no money, and I was sick for a while," and her voice broke. She wiped her face quickly. "Tonight, he told them he wanted out. He didn't want to do it anymore." Reese's jaw tightened in anger. Eli saw the leather on his gloves creak under the pressure of his fist. Lena continued. "They got mad. They hit him. Then they dragged him away. I followed them from far behind until I saw all of you here." She pointed at Eli. "I saw you run after them earlier. I thought maybe you could help." The alley felt colder. Eli's chest tightened. "Where did they take him?" Lena shook her head helplessly. "I don't know. Somewhere in their territory." The silver-haired biker exchanged a glance with Reese, one of those silent looks that carried heavy meaning. Reese stood up slowly, flexing his injured arm as though testing how much blood he'd lost. "They're holding him in one of their stash spots," Reese said. "Most likely," the silver-haired biker agreed. "Question is, which one?" A biker named Crow, tall, lean, with a black feather tattoo curling down his neck, stepped forward. "They've got 4 safe houses within 6 blocks. 2 on Ridge Lane, 1 behind the old cannery, and 1 near the train yard." Another rider, Brick, cracked his knuckles. "If they're pissed at the kid for trying to leave, they'll want him close. Probably Ridge Lane itself." Reese scraped a hand down his face. "They'll have watchers posted now that they know we're around." The silver-haired biker turned to Lena again. "Did you hear them say anything? Names, directions, anything at all?" She shook her head, eyes filling with helpless tears. "I just saw them drag him down the street. They kept looking around like they didn't want anyone to see." Reese sighed. "Means they weren't taking him to the main block. They'd be less careful there." Eli looked between the adults, feeling the pressure build behind his ribs. "We have to find him. They're not going to let him go." Everyone turned, surprised at the force in his voice. Eli felt heat rush to his face, but he didn't back down. Reese gave him a slow nod. "You're right." Lena let out a tiny, choked sob, and Eli immediately knelt beside her. "We'll get your brother back," he said softly. "I promise." The wind carried the faint sound of distant sirens, but no one moved. The bikers were waiting for the silver-haired rider's call. Finally, he spoke. "All right, we split." He pointed. "Crow, take Brick and run the cannery route. Reese, take Eli and check the Ridge Lane west entrance. If they move that kid fast, they'd take the alleys. You two know how to run them better than most." Reese grunted, not objecting. "And I'll take the rest and check the train yard." Lena's breath hitched. I don't want to stay alone." "You're not," the silver-haired rider said. "You're coming with me. You'll be safer surrounded by all of us." He turned back to Eli. "You sure you're up for this?" Eli nodded without hesitation. "Yes." Reese gave a faint smirk. "Good. Stay close to me and don't try any hero moves." Eli shifted awkwardly, clutching the knife he still hadn't dropped. "Should I keep this?" Reese shook his head and gently took it from his hand. "I said drop it, kid. You're not stabbing anybody." Eli exhaled, suddenly relieved not to be holding the cold metal anymore. The bikers mounted their motorcycles one by one. Reese tossed Eli a helmet that was a little too big. "You're riding with me." Eli blinked. "For real? Unless you want to run the whole way." Eli scrambled on behind him, holding onto the back rail. Lena watched him go with a tiny, hopeful expression, as if Eli himself was carrying her hope. Engines roared again. Splitting into groups, the Hell's Angels took off in different directions, carving through the night like three separate storms. Reese and Eli darted into the narrow grid of alleys that fed into Ridge Lane territory. The deeper they went, the more the smell changed. Old trash, gasoline, mold creeping up brick walls. Eli recognized it too well. He'd slept in these streets, hidden in these corners. He knew every crack and crevice where danger liked to live. Reese slowed as they approached a fork between two abandoned auto shops. He cut the engine and signaled for silence. Eli hopped off quietly. Reese spoke in a low whisper. "They move fast when they're spooked. Bringing out their crew earlier means they're on alert." His eyes scanned the darkness. "If they're holding the kids somewhere nearby, they'll have lookouts." Eli nodded, eyes narrowing. "I know where they usually stand." Reese glanced sideways. "How do you know?" "Because I used to hide from them," Eli said, swallowing. "And sometimes they didn't see me." Reese stared for a moment. Then a slow grin crossed his face. "Kid, remind me to never play hide and seek with you." They moved deeper into the alley, silent as shadows. But then Eli froze. Footsteps. Reese pressed Eli back behind a dumpster. Two Ridge Lane crew members walked into view, whispering sharply. One muttered, "Boss wants the kid moved tonight." The other hissed, "Where?" "We already got trouble with the Angels nosing around. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere they won't look." The first one kicked a can aside. "I just hope the kid ain't passed out again." Eli's heart lurched. Passed out. They were hurting Milo. Reese shot Eli a look, a hard, focused look that said one thing. "We follow them." Without a word, they slipped into the darkness behind the two crew members, keeping distance but never losing sight. As the alley narrowed and the crew members turned deeper into Ridge Lane territory, Eli felt something shift in the air, a tension, a heaviness, a sense that they were walking straight toward something dangerous. But they couldn't turn back, because somewhere ahead, Milo was waiting, and Tom was running out. The two Ridge Lane crew members walked with purpose, their hushed voices bouncing off the alley walls. Reese and Eli shadowed them from a careful distance, just far enough to stay unseen, but close enough to catch every word. The deeper they moved into Ridge Lane territory, the more the city felt like it was holding its breath. Streetlights flickered, buildings leaned inward like watching sentinels, and the smell of damp concrete thickened the air. Reese leaned close to Eli, whispering, "Stay behind me. If they turn, duck into the shadows." Eli nodded, fighting the tremor in his hands. His pulse thudded in his ears. The crew members walked past a boarded-up laundromat, then a row of graffiti-tagged garages. Their silhouettes moved with the ease of men who owned these streets. Every turn they took threaded deeper into the parts of the neighborhood that even the cops avoided. Eli knew these blocks too well. Nights spent sleeping behind dumpsters, mornings eating whatever he could find in trash bins. He'd always stayed far from the territory controlled by Ridge Lane, because trouble clung to their corners like fog. Now he stepped through those same shadows willingly. Reese squeezed his shoulder lightly. "You holding up?" Eli didn't look up. "I'm fine. Just worried for Milo." Reese's voice softened a fraction. "That makes two of us." The crew members suddenly stopped at the mouth of a narrow alley. One of them pulled out his phone, tapping fast. Reese and Eli pressed behind a dented steel door. The first crew member muttered, "He's awake now." Screaming again. Eli's breath hitched. The second one groaned. "Boss told us to gag him. Said he's tired of hearing the kid yell." Rage boiled in Eli's chest. He felt his nails digging into his palms. Reese saw the shift and placed a firm hand on his shoulder, grounding him, steadying him. "Control it," he whispered. "We can't help him if we blow our cover." Eli clenched his jaw, forcing himself to breathe. The two crew members continued down the alley until they reached an old auto shop. Its windows cracked, its metal siding rusted, its faded sign reading Wells Repair barely hanging on by one bolt. The place looked abandoned, swallowed by darkness. But the flicker of light from a covered window told the truth. Reese exhaled quietly. Bingo! The first crew member knocked 3 times, paused, then knocked twice more. A shifting noise came from inside, locks, bolts, then a creak of an opening door. A broad man, arms thick with tattoos, peered out. "You're late." The crew member shoved past him. "Kid fainted twice. We had to drag him." The man grunted. "The boss said move him in an hour." "Move him?" Reese's eyes narrowed. "They're not keeping him here much longer." Eli whispered, "We have to get inside." "Not yet." "But—" Reese turned sharply. "Not yet." Then, softer but iron firm, "We need the others." Eli forced himself to nod. He knew Reese was right, but the thought of Milo suffering inside that building made his stomach twist. The broad man closed the door. Lock slid back into place. The alley fell silent again. Reese grabbed Eli by the sleeve and pulled him deeper into the shadows. "We fall back. Call the others. Plan this right. No rushing." But just as they turned away, a sudden metal clang echoed from the adjacent alley. Both crew members inside the shop shouted, "Who's out there?" A flashlight beam slashed across the darkness. Reese cursed under his breath. "Move, kid." He grabbed Eli's wrist and dragged him behind a pile of scrap metal just as the auto shop door burst open. 2 Ridge Lane crew members charged out, flashlights slicing the alley in frantic arcs. Eli tried to quiet his breathing, but the beam swept dangerously close. Reese pulled him lower, shielding him with his body. A new voice came from the door. "Check the west end. Someone's snooping around." That wasn't Reese or Eli. Someone else had made noise. Reese's eyes narrowed. Someone else is watching them. Eli's eyes widened. Another gang? Don't know. Doesn't matter right now. We use it. The crew members split up, one heading deeper down the alley, the other climbing onto a stack of tires to get a better view. Reese counted silently, waiting for the moment when their backs were turned at the same time. 3, 2, 1 now. They bolted. Silent. Swift. Cutting across the alley like shadows jumping from one wall to the next. Reese guided Eli around the corner, slipping through a crack in a chain-link fence. Once they were safely behind the collapsed shed at the end of the block, Reese finally exhaled hard. "We need to contact the others." Eli nodded, breath shaking. "You think they saw us?" "No. But they're spooked now. Which means they'll move the kid faster. Our window is shrinking." Reese pulled out his phone, dialing the silver-haired rider. The call connected quickly. "You find anything?" the older biker asked. Reese said, "Yeah. They've got the kid in the old Wells repair shop. Crew is guarding him. They're planning to move him soon." A pause, tense, thoughtful. "Good work. Hold position. We're coming." Reese pocketed the phone and looked at Eli. "You ready for this?" Eli swallowed hard. "Yeah." But then something hit the pavement nearby with a dull thump. Eli flinched. Reese spun around. A small stone. A second later, a whisper echoed from behind the shed. "Hey, you two." Reese tensed instantly. "Who's there?" A figure stepped forward. Not Ridge Lane, not a biker, not anyone Eli had ever seen. A teenage boy, no older than 16, wearing torn jeans and a faded hoodie. His face was bruised, his lips split, and his breath came in panicked spurts. The boy raised both hands, trembling. "Please don't hit me. I'm not with them anymore." Reese's tone sharpened. "Who are you?" The boy swallowed. "Name's Callum. I used to run with Ridge Lane. I know where they're taking the kid." Eli's pulse spiked. Reese stepped closer, towering over him. "How?" "Because," Callum whispered, eyes darting toward the auto shop like he expected someone to burst out any second. "Because I escaped an hour ago." Eli froze. Reese's eyes darkened. "Escaped from what?" Callum's voice cracked. From the same place they're about to take Milo. And for the first time tonight, Eli truly understood how deep this went, and how dangerous the next move would be. Callum had stopped pretending to be tough the moment the Angels dragged him inside the abandoned diner the club used as a temporary staging point. The tile floors were cracked, the once red booths faded to dull maroon, and rain thudded on the sagging metal roof. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the circle of leather-vested men silently staring at him. Reese stood at the front, arms crossed, soaked jacket dripping onto the floor. Eli sat on a counter stool nearby, shoulders tight with worry, but refusing to be sent outside. The kid insisted he wanted to hear everything. Callum's wrists were tied to the steel chair with paracord. The Angels kept for situations just like this. He swallowed hard, ice darting between them. Every time his gaze met Reese's, it broke immediately. Reese crouched in front of him. "Start talking. Where's Milo?" Callum hesitated, but only for a moment. Reese didn't threaten him, didn't raise his voice, just stared, steady and unblinking. It was that calm that melted him quickest. "They moved him," Callum said, breath trembling. "He's not at the Ridge Lane apartments anymore." Reese's jaw set hard. "Where?" "A crossing point, down at the Quarry Hold. Big rusted warehouse with green shutters. They said they're keeping the kid there until your club pays up or backs off." A ripple of anger traveled through the room. Not yelling, just the quiet shift of men who had decided what needed doing. Reese leaned in. "Who's giving orders now?" "I know Marlow's name came up earlier." Callum nodded shakily. "It's him. Marlow. He's not just another runner. He bought loyalty. Got ex-security guys. Gear. Lookouts. He's ready for you." "Is he now?" Reese said flatly. Eli stepped off the counter, fists tight. "Milo's younger than me. He shouldn't be going through this. Why are they doing this to him?" Callum didn't dare look at the kid. They figured Reese wouldn't let any boy connected to the Angels slip through their fingers. Milo just got caught in the wrong street at the wrong time. Eli's breath shook, but Reese placed a grounding hand on his shoulder. "Hey, we're getting him back." Eli nodded, but didn't look convinced yet. One of the senior Angels, Dax, leaned forward, tapping a toothpick against the table. "Reese, you know that warehouse. You know damn well they'll have high ground inside." Captain Leon, the oldest of the group, added, "And if Marlow's running point, he'll have motion lights rigged. Maybe makeshift choke points." Reese didn't blink. "I know. Then you also know going in blind is suicide," Dax said. Reese rose, took a few steps toward the cracked window, rain blurring the neon glow outside. "We're not going in blind." He looked to Callum again. "How many men are at the warehouse?" 10. Maybe 12. They're rotating. Some stay outside with trucks. "And Milo?" Callum rubbed his bound hands nervously. "Inside. Back office. Marlow said to keep him comfortable, but monitored." Eli muttered, "Comfortable, right?" Reese turned back to the club. His voice stayed low, steady. "We split into 3 teams. One through the loading bay, one through the skylight, one to take out the lookout post on the radio tower." A murmur of approval went around the room. Captain Leon scratched his beard. "Who hits the tower?" "Me." Dax snorted. "You always want the high ground. Because it wins fights." Eli tugged Reese's jacket again. "What do I do?" Reese crouched to meet his eyes. "You stay with Leon until we get word that Milo's clear. No arguments." For a second, Eli looked ready to protest. But then he exhaled. "Fine. Just bring him out." "We will," Reese said. The Angels moved with quiet purpose. Maps unfolded across tables. Radios checked. Ammo sorted. Boots tightened. Leather jackets were pulled on. No one raised their voice. No one panicked. It was the kind of preparation that came from years of being underestimated. As they gathered near the exit, thunder cracked above them, and the rain thickened outside in shimmering sheets. Reese slung his rifle strap over his shoulder, the familiar weight settling against him like an extension of his will. Just before stepping out, he turned to Callum. "You're staying here. If you're lying about any of this, I'll know the second we get there." Callum nodded vigorously. I told you everything. I swear. Eli stepped beside Reese as the angels filed outside. Reese? Yeah, kid. You ever gotten someone back like this before? Reese exhaled through his nose. More times than I'd like to count. Eli didn't smile, but something settled in him, a belief that hadn't been there moments earlier. Reese placed a hand on Eli's head briefly, then moved toward the row of bikes and trucks waiting under the storm. The angels spread out, engines rumbling low, headlights slicing through the rain as they began rolling toward the quarry outskirts. The rescue wasn't happening tomorrow. It was happening tonight, and they were ready for whatever waited inside that warehouse. The rain only got heavier as the angels carved through the back roads leading to the quarry. The storm lit the sky in brief white flashes, revealing the silhouettes of jagged rock walls rising like dark teeth on either side. Water pooled along the gravel path, spraying beneath the wheels of the bikes and trucks following close behind. Reese rode at the front, visor wet, eyes sharp. Every muscle in his body was coiled and ready, focused not on the danger, but on Milo's face. The kid had been with them long enough to become family. Nobody took the family. Not from him. Not from the angels. Behind him, in the second truck, Eli sat between Leon and Dax. He kept wiping fog off the window with the sleeve of his hoodie, staring out into the wet darkness as if he might somehow spot the warehouse before anyone else. His legs bounced restlessly. Leon noticed. "You're shaking," he said, not unkindly. Eli swallowed. "Not from fear." Dax smirked. "Good. Fear gets you killed." Eli stared ahead again. "Milo wouldn't give up on me. I'm not giving up on him." Meanwhile, Reese signaled with 2 taps on the handlebars. The group slowed as they reached the mouth of the quarry. A massive slope dipped downward, revealing a wide, open pit that had long since stopped producing stone. The place was nearly abandoned, aside from the hulking silhouette of the warehouse sitting near the waterlogged center. Only one strip of dim lights glowed near the loading bay entrance. Everything else remained pitch dark, perfect for an ambush. Reese pulled the bike behind an outcropping of rock. The rest followed, engines fading out one by one into the storm's steady roar. When only the rain remained, Reese lifted his chin toward the warehouse. "That's it." Leon and Dax leaned forward to stare. Eli held his breath. From here, the warehouse looked quiet. But the angels knew better. Reese lowered his voice. "Everyone splits now. Skylight team heads left. Loading bay team circles the far rock wall. Tower team with me." He pointed toward a rust-eaten metal structure perched on the cliff to their right. A lookout post, a tall tower barely holding itself together, but still high enough to see the entire pit. "If they have eyes up there," Reese said, "they'll see every one of us before we get within 50 yards. Dax cracked his knuckles. "Then let's make sure they don't." Reese motioned for 3 angels to follow him. Eli stepped forward automatically. "No," Reese said quietly. "You stay here. You go in with Leon only when we give the word." Eli clenched his jaw. "I'm not scared." "I know. But you're needed when Milo gets out." "Not before." Eli hated it, but he nodded. Reese tapped his shoulder once, then headed out into the rain with his tower team. The climb up the slick rocks toward the lookout tower was brutal. Mud slid beneath their boots. Lightning flashed overhead, revealing the tower's thin outline. Every few steps, Reese dropped to one knee, scanning the shadows for movement. Halfway up, he held up a fist. The team froze. Footsteps. Muted. Careful. Inside the tower, Reese signaled 3 hand gestures. Sweep left, funnel right, breach center. Lightning cracked again, giving them a momentary glimpse of a man inside the tower, holding a radio, pacing near the open window. Reese whispered, "Move." They ascended in complete silence. A creak of metal, a shift of weight, a gust of wind. The lookout never heard them coming. Reese grabbed him from behind, covering his mouth. The man struggled for a moment, but a chokehold dropped him quietly. The angels dragged him out of sight and tied him with the same paracord they'd used on Callum. Reese picked up the radio from the floor. Static hummed softly. A voice crackled through. Post 1, status check. Post 1, respond. Marlow wants updates. Reese clicked the button, disguising his voice under the storm's rumble. Post 1 steady. Nothing moving. A brief pause. Good. Stay alert. They'll come. Reese's eyes chilled. They were expecting the angels. He set the radio down and motioned the team to sweep the ledge. With the tower neutralized, the entire quarry lay visible below. The loading bay team was already in position, silently hugging the warehouse wall. The skylight team crouched on the roof, waiting for Reese's signal. Below, the warehouse doors suddenly creaked open. A figure stepped out. Tall, lean, coat whipping in the wind. Marlow. He looked out over the quarry, scanning the darkness as though he sensed the angels' presence even without seeing them. But the sight that cut deepest was the radio in his hand, and the fact that he wasn't alone. 2 armed guards flanked him. Reese felt his jaw tighten. They were gearing up for a fight. Lightning split the sky again, and Marlow's voice carried faintly through the rain as he spoke to his men. Stay sharp. Reese won't leave that boy behind. He'll come for him. Reese's grip tightened around his weapon, but he didn't move yet. Not until everyone was in place. Not until the plan unfolded as one. He whispered into his calm, all teams ready. One by one, voices cracked through the static. Roof ready. Bay ready. Inner corridor ready. Leon's voice last. Kids with me. We're in position. Reese exhaled through his nose. This was it. He raised his hand, fingers poised to signal the beginning of the operation. And the warehouse lights suddenly snapped on, blazing across the quarry. Every angel froze. And then, a loud, amplified voice echoed across the pit. Reese, I know you're out there. Marlow, you want the boy back? Come get him. The lights were no longer random security lamps. They were traps. Floodlights. Blinding white and aimed outward. Reese cursed under his breath. They had turned the entire quarry into a lit kill zone. Eli, watching from below with Leon, whispered with dread. He knew. Reese didn't panic. He didn't freeze. He simply lowered his hand and muttered into his radio. Stick to the plan. We're going in anyway. The angels tensed, weapons drawn. The storm raged, and the warehouse waited. The quarry glowed under the blinding floodlights, turning rain into white needles. Every angel tensed behind whatever cover they could find as Marlow's taunt echoed across the pit. Reese ducked low behind the tower railing, eyes narrowing. They'd been spotted, or worse, anticipated. But he didn't let the sudden exposure shake him. If Marlow wanted a war, he'd get one. Reese pressed the radio to his mouth. Everyone holds positions. We don't fire until I say. Reese, Leon whispered harshly from below, shielding Eli with his arm. He lit the whole damn quarry up. We're open. I know, Reese answered. But Marlow also exposed himself by stepping into the open. See it for what it is, a bluff dressed as confidence. On the ground, Eli stared up at the warehouse's shining windows. He could almost see shadows moving behind them. Men, guards, weapons shifting, waiting. He's got Milo, Eli said, his voice cracking slightly. He's keeping Milo in there while he plays games. Leon gave the boy a steady nod. That's why we keep our heads. That's how we get him back alive. Up on the tower, Reese raised his hand again. Even with Marlow shouting challenges into the night, Reese's cool focus cut through the noise. Loading team, he said quietly. Marlow wants our attention outside. So we give him a little, while you slip in. A soft click came from Dax's radio. Copy. Moving. Reese watched as the loading bay team, for angels clad in dark gear, slid along the rocks toward the warehouse. Even in the floodlight glare, they stayed below the ridge, hugging the shadows just out of sight. But they weren't the only ones moving. Marlow's guards edged forward from the warehouse entrance. 2, then 4, then 6, rifles angled outward, scanning for shapes. Their movements were controlled, disciplined. Not quick thugs, paid men, trained men. Reese saw the shift immediately. Marlow's got muscle he didn't brag about, he muttered. The guard formation fanned out, covering the quarry's open floor. One lifted his chin toward the tower. Check the high ground. Reese grabbed his team and pressed them flat against the platform as a beam of light swept across the rocks below. Boots clattered against metal. The guard was climbing. Reese didn't hesitate. He whispered into the radio. Roof team, shift to Skylight 2 and get eyes inside now. They're sweeping the tower. From the warehouse roof, a faint crackle replied. On it. Reese turned back just in time to see a rifle barrel appear at the top of the ladder. The guard's head followed, scanning the platform. Reese moved in one controlled motion, lunging, grabbing the man's wrist, and pulling him upward just enough to slam him face first into the rail. The guard collapsed silently. The others in Reese's team dragged him to the floor. Below, the floodlights hummed. Marlow paced on the loading dock like a general waiting for his enemy to make the first mistake. Reese, Marlow shouted again. This doesn't have to end ugly. Come negotiate. I'll give you 30 seconds to be smart. Eli's stomach twisted. Negotiation? He knew exactly what that meant. Marlow wanted leverage, not peace. Leon tightened his grip on Eli's shoulder. Don't listen to that garbage. But Eli wasn't listening to Leon. He was watching the warehouse door. He'd seen something. Movement. A flicker. A small silhouette. Not tall enough to be one of Marlow's men. Leon, Eli whispered. I think I saw him. Leon followed the boy's gaze. The door to the warehouse office cracked open for half a second. A smaller shadow leaned forward, then was yanked back inside. Milo. Leon breathed out, jaw tightening. He's alive. That's all we needed to know. High above, Reese clicked his radio twice. The signal. The roof team froze. Dax's loading bay crew paused in mid-step. Talk to me, Reese said. Who's got visual inside? A voice whispered back. Skylight 2 open. We've got eyes. And another pause. Then, kids tied to a chair in the office. Guard him. And Marlow's got 3 more near the central floor. Reese inhaled slowly. Marlow wasn't improvising this. He'd staged it. The floodlights. The yelling. The formation. The guards inside and out. Reese studied the layout with razor focus, the rain dripping from his chin. Okay, he murmured. We adjust. Adjust how? Someone whispered. Reese's eyes hardened. We make him think we're falling for the trap. He gave the next command with absolute clarity. I'm going down onto the quarry floor. The radio erupted with objections. Dax, Leon, the roof team, all at once. Reese, don't. You walk into those lights, you're a target. Just give us the order, we'll breach blind if we have to. Don't be stupid. But Reese wasn't listening. This is how we get them off Milo, he said. Marlow wants to see me. Good. Let him. Eli's eyes widened. Reese, no. That's suicide. Reese shook his head. Not if you know the game. He explained quickly, quietly. Marlow wants me front and center so he can force leverage. That means every guard inside will move toward the floor, away from Milo. That gives the roof team a clean angle. And Dax has a corridor to the office. Silence. Not disagreement. Understanding. Leon nodded once. All right. But if you go down there, we're covering you with everything we've got. Reese touched the comm. That's the idea. He rose from behind cover on the tower. Rain whipped across his face. The quarry floor below shimmered in the floodlights. Marlow stood tall at the center, soaking wet, arms out like a twisted host welcoming a guest. Reese whispered, all teams, get ready. He stepped into the light. The angels froze. Guards snapped rifles upward. Marlow grinned like a predator who'd been waiting for this exact moment. There he is, Marlow called out. The man of the hour. Reese kept walking, boots crunching through wet gravel. Above him, the roof team shifted into position. Behind him, Dax's team crept toward the loading bay door. To his left, Leon covered Eli with both arms as they crouched behind the rock wall. Rain poured harder. The floodlights burned brighter. The tension stretched so tight it almost screamed. Marlow stepped forward. Reese, he said. Let's talk. Reese stopped 10 paces away. We're not talking, he replied calmly. You're releasing Milo. Marlow smirked. No, I'm not. Reese's eyes didn't flinch. Then this ends now. Marlow's grin widened. Good. He snapped his fingers, and dozens of rifles clicked at once around the quarry. Reese whispered into his radio, so low only the angels heard him. Teams now. The moment Reese said, now, the quarry erupted. The angels moved as one, silent shadows turning into a coordinated storm. But Marlow's men reacted fast, rifles snapping upward at the slightest sound. Reese dove behind a slab of quarry stone as the first shots cracked through the night, bullets sparking off metal and rock. Floodlights turned the falling rain into streaks of white fire. The entire pit exploded with motion. From the roof, the Skylight team swung into position. Two of them used grapples to lower themselves over the metal panels, steady and precise despite the storm hammering down on them. Their lead, a sharp-eyed angel named Briggs, whispered into the calm. Skylight 2 breaking now. Metal groaned. A sheet of rusted steel dropped inward with a deafening clang. Inside the warehouse, guards spun toward the noise, just as planned. Reese sprinted low toward a forklift that lay overturned near the loading area, bullets tearing into the ground behind him. Marlow's men fired without hesitation, each crack of their rifles echoing across the quarry walls. But Reese moved like he'd trained for this moment his entire life. Loading team move, he barked into the calm. Dax burst from behind the rock wall with his crew, charging the loading bay entrance. They fired in short, controlled bursts, taking out 2 guards before they could fully turn toward the breach. Marlow's snarl carried through the storm. Don't let them in. Take them down. But everything was happening too fast. Inside the warehouse, under the skylight, Briggs and his partner landed on the steel beams above the main floor. From their vantage point, they saw everything. The stacked crates, the scattered floodlights, the narrow corridor that led to the back office, and the guard posted right outside Milo's room. Briggs raised his rifle. One down, he whispered. A single suppressed shot cracked. The guard dropped silently. From the quarry floor, Reese could not see inside, but he heard the click in his earpiece. A signal. Office corridor, clear. He slid behind the forklift, catching his breath for half a second. Rain pounded the metal so loud it almost drowned out the nearby gunfire. Eli and Leon watched from the ridge. The kid's heart hammered so hard he felt it in his ears. The flashes of muzzle fire, the shouts, the floodlights. It felt like a nightmare and a movie and a disaster all at once. Leon, Eli whispered sharply. Dax's team is in. They're inside. Leon didn't respond. He was too focused, tracking Reese through the quarry floor with eyes sharp as a hawk's. He's heading to the left side, trying to cut off Marlow's angle. But Marlow wasn't a fool. He moved with surprising speed for a man so composed. 3 of his armed guards followed him, fanning out toward the center of the pit, filing into firing positions. Marlow pointed at Reese, his voice cutting through the storm. Reese, you're outnumbered. Walk away, and I'll let the boy go. Reese didn't even turn his head. He's lying, Eli shouted, as if Reese could hear him from this far. Don't listen. Reese raised his radio again. Briggs. Status. A whisper answered. We're over the office. Milo's in the chair. Tied, but breathing. Guard down. Corridor clear. We're holding. Reese let out a slow breath. One more step. He bolted from behind the forklift and sprinted toward the concrete divider ahead of him. Gunfire exploded from Marlow's line, bullets ripping into the divider just as Reese dove behind it. Dust burst upward. Stone shattered. But he made it. From across the quarry, Marlow shouted. You're not making it to that warehouse. Reese keyed his mic. Dax door? In. Dax answered, breath heavy. We're in the inner hall. Got 2 more down. The office is 30 feet ahead. Hold position, Reese ordered. Don't move until I draw them. Eli couldn't take it anymore. Leon, we gotta help. Leon grabbed the boy and pulled him down as a stray bullet ricocheted off the rock above their heads. Kid, you move now, and you'll get shot. Reese knows what he's doing. You stay down. That's an order. Eli clenched his fists, frustration clawing at his chest. He wanted to be brave, wanted to be useful. He'd promised Reese he'd stay put, but sitting and watching while Milo sat tied in a room was torture. Back on the floor, Marlow stepped forward, motioning two of his guards to flank left. He's pinned, Marlow growled. Close in on him. Make sure he can't reach the warehouse. Reese's breathing was steady, even as bullets hit the divider inches from his arm. The trench-like divider gave him cover, but not much time. He spoke quickly into his mic. Roof team, be ready. When I run, you take the right angle. Dax, as soon as you hear chaos, you move. Get to the office. Get Milo. Briggs whispered, understood. Dax responded, on your go. Reese peeked for half a second, just long enough to mark the guard positions. Two at the left flank, one taking cover behind a fuel drum, and Marlow himself stepping forward with the arrogance of a man who believed he controlled the board. Reese whispered, here we go. He inhaled sharply and sprinted. Gunfire erupted instantly, sparks exploding off the wet ground around his boots. Marlow shouted orders, his voice cracking through the chaos. Take him down. But they missed by inches. Reese zigzagged through open gravel, sliding behind stacked pallets halfway to the warehouse. Above him, Briggs fired 3 rapid suppressed shots. 2 guards dropped. The third dove for cover. Inside the warehouse, the noise echoed like thunder. Dax heard it and growled. That's our cue. Move. They barreled down the hall toward the office. Reese yelled into the comm. Dax, now. Dax shouldered through the final door. Inside, Milo flinched, bound to the chair, eyes wide and terrified. But the moment he saw Dax, he exhaled a tiny breath that broke every heart in the room. Kids secured, Dax shouted. Reese didn't get to breathe relief. Marlow had finally seen what Reese was doing. He froze. His smile dropped. He whipped toward the warehouse. They're going for the boy. Get inside. 2 more guards sprinted past him. Reese cursed under his breath and stood, exposed, and fired 3 shots to slow them down. 1 guard shrieked and fell. The other stumbled. But Marlow was already running, fury twisting his face. Eli saw it first. He jolted upright. Leon, Marlow's going for the warehouse door. Leon snapped the radio to his mouth. Reese, Marlow's coming to you. Reese didn't answer. He couldn't, because Marlow had reached the warehouse steps, and he had pulled a detonator from his pocket. A dead man's switch. Eli gasped. No, he's gonna. Leon's face drained of color. Marlow pressed the button halfway down, and the ground beneath the warehouse shuddered. The world didn't explode all at once. It buckled. Reese felt the shockwave before he heard it, an angry, concussive thump that blasted dust from the seams of the Quarry Hold Warehouse and sent a ripple through the ground beneath his boots. Then came the roar, a deep, gut-punching blast that ripped outward as if the earth itself was coughing fire. The building convulsed. Metal screamed. Glass burst. Sections of the outer wall rippled outward like fabric kicked by a giant. Reese staggered back as debris rained down in choking clouds. Flames licked out of shattered windows, the heat washing over him hard enough that his eyes watered. Milo, he yelled instinctively. Even though Milo was still inside, still in the labyrinth of industrial corridors where Dax, Leon, and Briggs had been rushing him toward the east door. He couldn't see them. He couldn't hear them. Only the fire. Only the screaming steel. Reese's chest seized. He sprinted toward the collapsing entrance, just as half the roof folded inward with a thunderous crack. A wall of scorched air slammed him off his feet and sent him skidding across gravel. He hit hard, rolled, coughed until blood hit his tongue. Then he forced himself up. Dax, he shouted into the inferno. Leon, Briggs, come on, answer me. Another explosion popped inside, smaller but sharp, like a gas line buckling under pressure. Sparks shot out through a warped doorway. Reese pushed forward anyway. His lungs fought every breath. Smoke clawed at his throat. His vision swam. But he kept moving, hand over hand, pulling himself along the fractured concrete until he reached the twisted loading bay opening. He leaned in. Inside, the warehouse was a nightmare of tilting walkways, fallen lights, and flames chewing through wooden crates. The steel mezzanine where Marlow had been standing now sagged at a deadly angle, and one side collapsed entirely. But Marlow himself. Reese spotted movement. The man was pinned under a chunk of collapsed scaffolding, bleeding, half-burned, one leg crushed beneath steel. The detonator lay a few feet away, flickering weakly in the smoke. Marlow's head turned. He saw Reese. And he laughed. Not loud. Not triumphant. A wet, broken laugh that gurgled through blood. "You can't save them," Marlow rasped, coughing violently. "This place, it's wired, all of it, goes down together." Reese didn't waste breath on him. He stepped over the broken metal, searching desperately through the haze for a sign of the crew of Milo. A voice finally cracked through the smoke. "Reese. Dax." Reese's legs nearly gave out in relief. A moment later, Dax emerged through a wavering curtain of fire, half carrying Milo, half dragging him. The boy was awake, but barely, his arms wrapped around Dax's neck as the biker shielded him from falling debris with his own body. Leon stumbled behind them, coughing, one sleeve on fire. Briggs slapped the flames out with his bare hand and shoved him forward. Dax choked. "We need another exit." East corridor collapsed. Reese grabbed Milo from Dax and lifted the boy into his arms. Milo gasped for air, clinging to Reese's jacket. "I got you," Reese whispered, voice breaking. "Stay with me, kid. Stay awake." A support beam overhead groaned ominously. Briggs looked up. "We've got maybe 40 seconds before the whole spine gives out." Leon pointed. "North side access tunnel. Last chance." But the access tunnel was beyond a corridor currently swallowed by flame. Dax met Reese's eyes. Reese nodded before he could think. He shifted Milo's weight, then lowered his shoulder and charged toward the fire. "Follow me." The others covered their faces and barreled after him. Reese plowed through the heat, teeth gritted, eyes slitted against the blistering light. The corridor was an oven. Wooden pallets stacked along the wall crackled and ignited one by one, sparks pelting his face. The tunnel door loomed ahead, half off its hinges. Reese kicked it open, and fresh air blasted in like salvation. "Out! Out now!" Dax barked behind him. They spilled into the narrow access shaft, a hollow passage carved through quarry stone, cool and dark compared to the inferno behind them. Milo trembled against Reese's chest, coughing hard. Briggs reached back and slammed the warped metal door shut, buying precious seconds. Then the tunnel shook. A deep, cavernous boom reverberated behind them as another section of the warehouse caved. Dust rained down from the rock ceiling. Leon shoved Briggs forward. "Move. Tunnel's not safe yet." They sprinted. Reese's lungs burned. Milo's weight grew heavier in his arms as the boy's consciousness slid in and out. Dax stayed close behind, pushing Reese onward every time he faltered. Leon limped but didn't stop. Briggs kept glancing back, making sure the tunnel wasn't collapsing on top of them. A distant rumble echoed through the stone. The warehouse was dying. And then, a final, catastrophic explosion tore through Quarry Hold. Heat blasted through the tunnel like a dragon's breath. Reese stumbled as the ground heaved. The walls shuddered, cracks snaking through the stone. "Go, go, go!" Dax shouted. They emerged from the far end of the tunnel just as a plume of smoke and fire erupted out of the original loading bay, shooting debris into the night sky. The entire front half of the warehouse collapsed in a thunderous avalanche of steel and flame. They hit the gravel outside, rolling, coughing, gasping for air. When Reese finally lifted his head, his ears ringing, the Quarry Hold Warehouse was nothing but a burning skeleton. Leon lay on his back staring at the sky. Briggs was on hands and knees, vomiting from the smoke. Dax sat slumped, chest heaving, hands trembling uncontrollably. And Milo lay curled in Reese's arms, shaking but alive. Reese pressed his forehead to Milo's hair. "It's over," he whispered. "It's over, kid." But Dax, still staring at the burning warehouse, said in a cracked voice, "No, not yet." Reese looked up sharply. Dax nodded toward the flames. Marlow, he wasn't dead. And Reese felt something cold slide down his spine. Because he knew Dax was right. The fire hadn't finished the monster they had just escaped. The flames at Quarry Hold burned long into the night, staining the sky a harsh orange that flickered against the rubble like restless ghosts. Reese sat with his back against a rusted excavator, Milo curled weakly against his side, wrapped in Dax's spare leather jacket. Leon and Briggs were being checked by paramedics, oxygen masks strapped over their soot-blackened faces. Dax paced, restless, back and forth along the gravel path, unable to stand still while adrenaline still ripped through his blood. The fire crews fought the blaze in aggressive cycles, engines groaning, hoses blasting full force. Reese watched them with a cold knot in his stomach. The final explosion had nearly obliterated the entire warehouse, but one truth gnawed at him, persistent and undeniable. He hadn't seen Marlow die, and Marlow wasn't the type of man to let fire claim him if he still had a path to vengeance. Milo stirred in his arms. "Reese, did we make it?" Reese tightened his hold on him. "Yeah, kid. You made it out. You did everything right." "Dax saved me," Milo whispered, voice raspy. And you came for me." Reese felt a sharp ache in his chest. "Always," he said softly. "I told you I would." Milo leaned into him, exhausted but safe. Leon limped over, mask removed, face still streaked black. "Fire chief says when that last gas line blew, the central supports collapsed. Nobody survives that. Even if Marlow crawled out of the initial blast, the backdraft took everything else with it." Reese nodded but didn't answer. Dax came to a halt beside them. "You're not convinced, are you?" "No," Reese admitted. "But I'll live with not knowing." Dax crouched down, resting forearms on his knees. His eyes softened as he looked at Milo. "Kids tougher than half our recruits." Milo managed a faint grin. "You guys better not make fun of me for crying." Briggs' voice floated over from the medic van. "Brother, if you didn't cry, I would have accused you of being a robot." A few tired laughs rippled through them. Even Reese cracked a smirk. But it faded when a fire captain approached, helmet tucked under his arm. "You Maddox?" he asked. Reese rose slowly, balancing Milo against his side. "Yeah." The captain sighed. "We searched the blast perimeter and what's left of the mezzanine. No survivors. And no remains we can confidently identify as well. Any specific individual." Dax stiffened. "So he might be in there," Briggs said. "Or he might not." The captain replied frankly. "Fire that hot. Some things don't leave much behind." The captain walked away, leaving the silence thicker than the smoke. Reese looked down at the boy in his arms. Milo's eyes were half closed, but he was listening. "Marlow's done," Reese said gently, more for Milo's sake than his own. "He won't hurt you again." Milo swallowed hard. "I'm not scared of him anymore." "I know," Reese murmured. "You proved that tonight." Dax rose and ran a hand through his hair, smearing soot across his forehead. "We're taking him back to the compound. Clean him up, get Doc Miller to check him over." Reese hesitated. "I can take him home. CPS, shelters." "No," Dax said firmly. "No damn shelters. Kid's coming with us tonight. He doesn't get tossed around anymore. You hear me?" Milo turned his face into Reese's side. "Please, don't send me back. Not tonight. I don't want to be alone." Reese's throat tightened. "Okay," he said, voice thick. "You're not going anywhere, I'm not." Something like relief cracked through Milo's whole body. He clung tighter, shaking. They walked together toward the row of bikes parked near the ridge, the engines still warm. Dax led the way, Briggs trailing behind. Leon drifting in the rear with a limp that would need days to fade. Reese didn't put Milo on a bike. Not tonight. He carried him into the back seat of the Angel's SUV, buckled him in, and sat beside him. Milo leaned against him immediately, breathing slow and steady. Dax closed the door quietly. The convoy rolled out, tires crunching gravel. Reese watched the burning warehouse disappear behind the cliffs. The quarry swallowed the firelight, leaving behind only smoke curling up into the night like a final, dissolving threat. Halfway down the mountain pass, Milo spoke without lifting his head. "Reese, do you think Marlow's really gone?" Reese brushed soot from the boy's hair. "I think the world's too big for monsters to stay in the shadows forever. And if he crawled out of that fire, he'll make a mistake. And when he does, we'll handle it." Milo nodded, slowly drifting toward sleep. The SUV rolled into the Angel's compound at dawn. Warm light spilled over the asphalt courtyard, painting the bikes gold. Members who'd been waiting through the night gathered silently as the group approached. No cheers, no noise, just the quiet, fierce pride of men watching one of their own carry a child who had survived hell. Reese stepped out with Milo in his arms. The boy blinked awake, confused but safe. Dax clapped Reese's shoulder. "You done good, Maddox." Reese exhaled. "We all did. And we'll finish the rest when the time comes," Dax added quietly. Behind them, Leon sank onto a bench, mumbling about needing a drip of coffee. Briggs was already pawing through the kitchen window, begging for breakfast. Someone handed Milo a blanket. Someone else offered to make him pancakes, as tall as he is. For the first time in days, Milo smiled. Reese let the moment soak in. Let himself feel the weight lift, just a fraction, but enough. Marlow might be dead, or he might not. But Reese had Milo. And Milo had a family now, one that didn't break, didn't abandon, didn't run. The sun rose. The night ended. And whatever came next, they'd face it together. As we wrap up this 10-part story, let me know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. And if you enjoyed this journey with Reese and Milo, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next story.